Miss you guys like crazy. Graduates, I'm so sorry. You guys have worked so hard, and this really sucks. But we will try to celebrate. You guys have worked so hard. So sorry. Found my cap today, from 2012. Seemed like forever ago. Um, but really just want to say I'm sorry about that. So, on our last Zoom, we had talked about discipleship and some of the questions you guys had. So, I thought I would read a little about when Jesus picked his first disciples. And I'm going to read Matthew and Luke. I'm going to read Matthew 4:18 through 22 first. Go back to it. If I can find it. There we go. Okay. So, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets. And he called to them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Before I go into Luke, I just want to point out something that I always thought was like, man, that's awesome. So whenever Jesus called them, and said, "Hey, follow me," they left immediately. Like they, no questions asked. And I've always thought that was so cool because, we have this book and we believe and we know all these things about Jesus. They didn't know these things. I mean, they were just there and they saw him and they knew from his presence, and it's still hard for us to ask no questions and do what he says and give up that control. So every time I read that and it says, immediately they followed him, I'm always like mind blown. But let me go to Luke 5. Ooh, too far. 5, 2 through 11. Try not to lick my fingers because, Corona. So it says, he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them, and they were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep, and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." I just want to pause for a second. They were professional fishermen. Like, that was their job. That's how they made their living. They didn't catch anything all night. But, this man comes on their boat and he's teaching and he tells them, go out. And they believe him and have so much faith in him. They're like, "Yeah, okay, we'll go out. I mean, we haven't had any luck, but because you said it, we'll go out." So they go out and let's see. When they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. So not only did they catch something, they caught so much that it was overfilling their boat and the other boat, and they were almost sinking. Two big boats. Let's see. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of the fish and they had taken. And so also were James and John, son of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. That's another thing that, astonishes me, is they left everything to follow him. I'm going to go back to Matthew and read a little something for you guys, but I just wanted to talk for a second, and we'll go over more of this in our Zoom tomorrow. These men, these were just the first few disciples. He got more. They followed him, they lived with him, he was their teacher for a few years, and I'd asked you guys what a disciple was, or what you felt like a disciple was, and we talked about it a little bit. And they were actually there with them, or with him, and so discipleship for us looks a little bit different. But you see, he left us some different tools, so that we could, follow him and have that life with him. It may not be exactly the way they had it, but one of those tools he gave us is our Bibles. It's the stories, of his teachings that the disciples heard, his relationship with them. So if you'll go to Matthew 7, we're going to look at verse 24. Maybe. Okay. So, before this, he had already done some teachings. He actually just got done with some teachings, and he was talking about different, basically different things like anxiety, anger, judging others, fasting, praying, all these things. And he ends it by saying, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine, does them, will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. And the rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and was a great fall of it." So I know I'm reading a different version than some of you guys, and I'm sorry about that. That's why I like you to kind of follow along and read it from yours. But let's start in the beginning. He's saying, "You hear these words of mine and actually listen to them." That's like a man who builds his house on a rock, on a strong foundation. When things happen, like it using example flood, it's still gonna be there. And when the wind blows and beat it, because it has that strong foundation, it's fine. But if you're not listening to his words and his wisdom, you're like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. If wind comes, if water comes, it's going to be torn down and washed away. When you're listening and you're reading your Bible, and you're listening to these teachings, you have that strong foundation, because it tells us, we'll have troubles, we'll have trials, it's not all going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy just because you believe in Jesus. That's not how it works. But because you have that foundation, it makes you stronger. You have the wisdom for what's about to come. And so later on, after that storm, you're standing, you're surviving. We're going to go into more details. I don't want to talk too much on here because I want to have an actual discussion with you guys. So we're going to go over these verses that I read to you. I'm excited to hear what y'all's favorite verses are. If you have not picked one, and if you don't have a favorite verse, I want you guys to maybe look up a topic in the Bible that you're having difficulties with. Like maybe you have anger issues, or you're fearful. Look up in your Bible app, look up those words, and you'll get different verses. And I want you to kind of look at those, and maybe something will speak to you. Um, Super excited for discussion tomorrow. I love you guys.